The judge leaned forward. His reading glasses slid down his nose. You! Judge Harold Brennan's voice cut through the murmur of the gallery. He pointed one liver-spotted finger at the small black girl standing beside the empty defense table. You think you can defend your father? Amara Whitfield was 8 years old. She wore a navy blue dress 2 sizes too big. Hand-me-down from a cousin she'd never met. Her hair was pulled back in 2 tight braids, edges smoothed with the last of her mother's old gel. She didn't blink. Yes, Your Honor. Laughter. Not polite chuckles. Full, chest-deep laughter that bounced off the oak-paneled walls and the brass light fixtures overhead. The bailiff, a thick-necked man with a mustache like a push-broom, covered his mouth with his fist. His shoulders shook. The prosecutor, Vincent Mallory, closed his leather folder and shook his head slowly. Like he'd just watched someone bet their rent on a scratch-off ticket. Even the court reporter smirked. Judge Brennan raised one silver eyebrow. Young lady, this is a felony trial. Armed robbery. Your father is facing 12 to 20 years in Stateville. You understand that? Yes, Your Honor. Do you have a law degree I'm unaware of? More laughter. Louder this time. Someone in the back row whispered, "This is embarrassing." Amara's hands stayed at her sides. She didn't fidget. Didn't look down. Her voice stayed level. No, Your Honor. But I have evidence. Brennan sighed like a man who'd heard every excuse in the world twice. He tapped his gavel once, not to silence the room, but to punctuate his patience running thin. Miss Whitfield, he said slowly, you are not an attorney. You cannot represent anyone in this court. Least of all yourself. I'm not representing myself, sir. I'm representing my father. That's not how this works. Prosecutor Mallory stood. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. He smelled like expensive cologne and old money. Your Honor, perhaps we could expedite this. The defendant has waived his right to counsel. He has no representation. We can proceed to sentencing based on the evidence already submitted. The judge nodded. I'm inclined to agree. Amara spoke again. Quieter this time. But every word landed. Your Honor, may I submit Exhibit A? Brennan's eyes narrowed. Exhibit what? She reached into the canvas tote bag sitting on the defense table. Pulled out a single sheet of paper. Placed it on the clerk's desk. The clerk glanced at it. Her expression shifted. Just a flicker. She handed it to the judge. Brennan scanned the page. His jaw tightened. The courtroom went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from respect. The kind that comes from confusion. Where did you get this? Brennan asked. Public records request, Amara said. Filed 14 days ago under the Freedom of Information Act. Illinois Statute 5 ILCS 140. Mallory's smile faded. Your Honor, he said quickly, whatever this is, it's inadmissible. The child has no standing, it's a timestamp log, Amara interrupted. From the security gate at the Riverway Industrial Complex. It shows my father clocked in at 10:17 p.m. on the night of the robbery. She paused. The robbery happened at 10:42 p.m. 25 minutes later. 3 miles away. Silence. Judge Brennan set the paper down. Slowly. Mallory's face flushed red. Your Honor, this is... Sit down, Mr. Mallory. The prosecutor Saturday. Brennan looked at Amara. Really looked at her this time. Young lady, he said quietly, sit down before you embarrass yourself further. Amara nodded. She walked back to her seat in the front row. The wooden bench creaked under her weight. The gallery was still laughing. Quieter now. But still laughing. They thought this was over. They thought she tried and failed. But no one in that room knew the truth. This case was already over. They just didn't know it yet. What would you do if the whole system laughed at you, but you knew you were right? Comment below. And if you want more stories where the underdog doesn't just fight back, they win, subscribe now before the next chapter drops. Amara woke up at 5:30 a.m. every morning. Not because anyone told her to. Because someone had to. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms. 1 bathroom with a mirror that had a crack running through it like a lightning bolt. The heating only worked in the living room, so she slept in 2 sweatshirts most nights. She kicked off the blankets. Her breath made small clouds in the cold air. In the kitchen, she pulled out the bread. Peanut butter. Grape jelly. She made 2 sandwiches. Cut them diagonal. Her father liked it that way. Marcus Whitfield worked nights. Security guard at the Riverway Industrial Complex. The plant had closed 3 years ago, but the owners still paid someone to watch the fence line. Make sure no one stripped the copper wiring or broke in to set up a drug spot. It didn't pay much. But it was steady. Amara wrapped the sandwiches in wax paper. Wrote Dad on one with a marker. Put it in a brown paper bag next to the door. Then she made her own lunch. Same sandwich. No note. By 6:15, she was dressed. Navy skirt. White polo shirt with a small stain near the collar she'd scrubbed at for 10 minutes the night before. It didn't come out. She checked the door twice. Locked. Then she walked 4 blocks to the bus stop. Marcus came home just after 7 p.m. He smelled like cold air and industrial soap. His work boots were scuffed at the toes. He set his thermos on the counter and smiled. "You make it to school on time?" "Yes, sir." "Lunch good?" "Yes, sir." He nodded. Pulled the sandwich out of the bag. Took a bite. "Perfect," he said. They didn't talk much during dinner. Amara reheated leftover rice and beans. Marcus ate slowly, like a man who'd been on his feet for 10 hours. Afterward, he pulled out the newspaper. Spread it across the small kitchen table. This was their ritual. "Read this," he said, tapping an article about a city council vote. Amara leaned over. "Scan the text." "What do you see?" he asked. "They're voting on a new tax." "Who benefits?" She read further. "The developers. They get a break if they build in the South Loop." "And who pays?" "Everyone else." Marcus nodded. "Always read the fine print, baby girl. People will tell you one thing with their mouth and something else with their money." He folded the paper. Looked at her. "You understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Because the world's not fair. But it is predictable. You just gotta know where to look." Every Saturday, Amara spent 3 hours at the Harold Washington Library. She didn't read kids' books. She read case summaries. Public records. Old newspaper archives. Not because she wanted to be a lawyer. Because she wanted to understand how things worked. How people got away with things. How systems protected some people and crushed others. The librarian, Mrs. Diane O'Kello, noticed. "You're reading about criminal procedure again?" she asked one afternoon, glancing at the stack of printouts on Amara's table. "Yes, Why?" Amara looked up. Her face serious. "Because my dad says the loudest person in the room isn't always right. So I want to know how to prove who is." Mrs. O'Kello smiled. Sad, but proud. "You're a smart girl, Amara." "Thank you. But don't grow up too fast." Amara didn't answer. She just kept reading. Marcus came home early that Tuesday. Amara was at the table doing homework. Math worksheet. Fractions. "Finish that up," he said. "I got something to show you." He pulled a small envelope from his jacket. Inside was a check. Not big, but bigger than usual. "Overtime," he said. "We're gonna get you new shoes. Maybe a winter coat that fits." Amara smiled. "A real one." "Thank you, Daddy." He kissed the top of her head. "You keep working hard, baby. You're gonna do something important one day." She hugged him. She didn't know that in less than 12 hours, squad cars would flood their block. That her father would be dragged out in handcuffs. That everything she knew would shatter. But she would remember this moment. The last normal night. Ever had a memory so peaceful you didn't realize it was the last one? Drop a comment if you've been there. And if you're already hooked, subscribe, because what happens next will break your heart before it makes you cheer. The first thing Amara heard was the sirens. Not distant. Close. She sat up in bed. Her room faced the street. Blue and red lights painted her walls in flashing streaks. She pushed the curtain aside. 6 squad cars. Maybe more. Doors opened. Officers stepped out. Hands on their belts. Her stomach dropped. The front door splintered open. Not knocked. Kicked. Amara ran into the hallway. Saw her father standing in the living room in his undershirt and jeans. Hands already up. Marcus Whitfield, an officer barked. That's me. Turn around. Hands behind your back. What's this about? You're under arrest for armed robbery. You have the right to remain silent. I didn't rob anybody. The officer shoved him forward. Face first into the wall. Cuffed him hard. Metal bit into his wrists. Amara screamed. Daddy! An officer blocked her path. A woman. Badge read K. Santos. Stay back, sweetie. What did he do? Just stay back. Marcus turned his head. Blood trickled from his nose. Amara, listen to me, don't talk, the officer snapped. Baby, call Mrs. Okello. You hear me? Call her. They dragged him out. Neighbors stood on their porches. Some recorded on their phones. Others just watched. No one said a word. The door hung crooked on its hinges. Amara stood alone in the middle of the living room. Breathing hard. Shaking. Mrs. Okello picked Amara up at 6 a.m. drove her to the jail. They sat in a waiting room with plastic chairs bolted to the floor. A TV in the corner showed the news on mute. When Marcus finally walked into the visitation booth, he looked smaller. Amara picked up the phone. Daddy, what happened? I don't know, baby. They said I robbed a cash depot. Did you? No, then why? I don't know. His voice cracked. Amara had never heard her father's voice crack. They said someone called in a tip. Said I was there. Said the timeline matches. What timeline? The robbery happened at 10:42 p.m. I clocked in at work at 10:15. But they're saying I had time to do it and get back. Amara's mind started moving. Where's the depot? Cicero Avenue. Near the old rail yard. That's 3 miles from your job. I know. Daddy, that doesn't make sense. Marcus pressed his hand against the glass. I know, baby. But they don't care. They already decided. The lawyer's name was Brian Cusack. He looked tired. His briefcase was held together with duct tape. His tie had a coffee stain. He met with Amara and Mrs. Okello in a small conference room that smelled like old carpet and desperation. Your father's case is complicated, Cusack said. How? Amara asked. The timeline is tight, but not impossible. The witness is anonymous, but credible according to the state. And there's no physical evidence tying him to the crime, but there's also no alibi that holds up under scrutiny. He clocked in at work, Amara said. I know. But the prosecution will argue he clocked in, left, committed the robbery, and came back. The depot is only 3 miles away. Did anyone see him leave? No, then how can they say he did? Cusack sighed. Because they don't have to prove he left. They just have to prove he could have. Amara stared at him. So what are you going to do? Cusack shuffled his papers. Wouldn't meet her eyes. I'm going to try to negotiate a plea. If your father pleads guilty to a lesser charge, he might only get 5 to 7 years instead of 12 to 20. But he didn't do it. I believe you. But belief doesn't win cases. Evidence does. And right now, we don't have much. Mrs. Okello put a hand on Amara's shoulder. Amara pulled away. So you're just giving up? I'm being realistic, Cusack said. No, Amara said quietly. You're being lazy. Cusack's face hardened. Excuse me? You didn't even check the security cameras. What cameras? At my dad's job. The gate has a camera. So does the depot. If you check both, you'll see he couldn't have done it. Cusack leaned back. Miss Whitfield, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but, did you request the footage? Silence. Did you? No, Cusack admitted. Not yet. Why not? Because even if I do, the prosecution will argue it's inconclusive. Or corrupted. Or irrelevant. Amara stood up. Then I'll do it myself. Cusack laughed. Not mean. Just defeated. You're 8 years old. I can read. This isn't a library project. This is a criminal trial. Amara looked him dead in the eyes. Then I guess you better get out of my way. She walked out. Mrs. Okello followed. Cusack sat alone in the room. He didn't call after her. Ever been told you're too young, too small, too powerless to make a difference? Comment yes if you've felt that. And subscribe now, because Amara's about to prove everyone wrong. Amara didn't go outside anymore. Not to play. Not to talk. Not for anything that wasn't necessary. Every day after school, she took the bus to the library. Sat at the same computer in the back corner. The one with the flickering screen that nobody else wanted. She opened a notebook. College ruled. Already half full. On the first page, she'd written, timeline, night of arrest 10:15 p.m., dad clocks in at Riverway 10:42 p.m., robbery at Cicero Depot 11:05 p.m., anonymous tip called in 11:34 p.m., dad arrested at home. She studied it. Something was wrong. If her father left work, drove to the depot, committed a robbery, and drove back, he'd need at least 40 minutes. Maybe more. But he was arrested at home. Not at work. Which meant he left work early. But the timesheet said he clocked out at 6:03 a.m. the next morning. Full shift. So when did he leave? Amara took the bus to Cicero Avenue on a Saturday. Mrs. Okello didn't know. The depot was a squat brick building behind a chain-link fence. Security camera on the corner. Another above the door. She stood across the street. Watched. A man in a blue uniform came out. Lit a cigarette. Amara crossed the street. Excuse me, sir? The man looked down. Yeah. I'm doing a school project on security systems. Can I ask you about your cameras? He smiled. You're a little young for that, aren't you? I'm in the gifted program. He shrugged. What do you want to know? Do the cameras record all the time? Yup. 24/7. Stored on a server for 90 days, then wiped. Can anyone access the footage? Not unless you got a warrant. Or you're the owner. Amara nodded. Smiled politely. Thank you, sir. She walked away. Opened her notebook. Wrote, footage exists. Server storage equals 90 days. Need warrant or owner access. Amara learned how to file a Freedom of Information Act request. It wasn't hard. The form was online. She filled it out by hand. Mailed it to the City of Chicago Department of Records. She requested, 1. Security footage from Riverway Industrial Complex, gate camera, October 10th, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. 1. Security footage from Cicero Avenue Depot, front entrance, October 10th, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. 1. Arrest report from Marcus Whitfield, case number 24 CR 8873. The website said responses could take up to 10 business days. She waited. While she waited, Amara started digging into something else. The prosecutor's name was Vincent Mallory. She typed his name into the public court database. 53 cases in the last 3 years. 41 convictions. She scrolled through the list. Most were poor defendants. Most were black or Latino. Most had public defenders. And most pled guilty. But one case stood out. State versus Caldwell, case number 90 of 4492. Status, sealed. Amara clicked. Access denied, case records restricted. She tried again. Same message. She wrote it down. Why is this case sealed? You need to eat, Mrs. Okello said, setting a plate of rice and chicken in front of Amara. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten in 2 days. I'm fine. Mrs. Okello sat down. Folded her hands. Amara, I know you're trying to help your father. But you're a child. You can't. I got the footage. Mrs. Okello stopped. What? Amara pulled a disc from her bag. The kind that came in a plastic sleeve with a label printed on the front. FOIA request number 102487, Riverway Gate Cam, the 10th of October 10 p.m. to midnight. It came yesterday, Amara said. Mrs. Okello stared at it. Did you watch it? Yes. And? Amara's face was stone. He didn't leave. Amara watched the footage again. Timestamp, 10:17 and 3 seconds p.m. Marcus Whitfield's truck pulls up to the gate. He swipes his badge. The gate opens. He drives through. Timestamp, 10:42 and 16 seconds p.m. The timestamp of the robbery. The gate camera shows nothing. No movement. No cars. Timestamp, 11:58 and 34 seconds p.m. A security supervisor walks past the camera. Stops. Looks directly at the lens. Amara paused the video. The man's badge was visible. Officer L. Reynolds, Cook County Sheriff's Department. She rewound. Watched again. Reynolds wasn't just walking past. He was checking the camera. Making sure it was recording. Amara opened a new tab. Typed, Officer L. Reynolds plus Cook County plus robbery cases 3 results. All 3 cases involved anonymous tips. All 3 cases were prosecuted by Vincent Mallory. All 3 cases were tried in front of Judge Harold Brennan. Amara's hands started shaking. Not from fear. From clarity. This wasn't random. This was a pattern. Amara printed everything. Security footage timestamps. Case records. Public arrest reports. She made a timeline. A flowchart. A map of every case connected to Mallory, Brennan, and Reynolds. She didn't tell anyone. Not Mrs. Okello. Not her father. Not even Cusack. Because she knew what they'd say. You're just a kid. You don't understand how this works. Let the adults handle it. But the adults weren't handling it. They were part of it. And Amara was done waiting. She had one more piece to find. The sealed case. State versus Caldwell. And she knew exactly how to get it. Sometimes the smallest person in the room sees what everyone else missed. Have you ever been underestimated? Drop underestimated in the comments. And if you want to see Amara expose them all, subscribe now. The trial was supposed to be simple. Open and shut. Prosecutor Mallory had said so himself in the hallway that morning. Amara heard him through the courtroom doors. This'll be over by lunch, he told his assistant. The defendant has no lawyer. No defense. No chance. But when Judge Brennan called the court to order, something was different. Marcus Whitfield sat at the defense table. Alone. The public defender, Brian Cusack, was gone. He'd withdrawn from the case 3 days earlier. Claimed irreconcilable differences with the defendant's family. Translation, Amara had called him useless to his face. Twice. Brennan looked annoyed. Mr. Whitfield, where is your counsel? Marcus stood. His jail jumpsuit was too big. The sleeves hung past his wrists. Your Honor, I'm representing myself. Mallory smirked. Brennan sighed. Mr. Whitfield, I strongly advise against. I know, Your Honor. But it's my right. It is. Proceed. Marcus sat back down. That's when Amara stood up. She was in the front row of the gallery. Same navy dress. Same 2 braids. Your Honor, she said clearly. I'd like to assist my father as co-counsel. The room went silent. Then someone laughed. Then everyone laughed. Brennan's face turned red. Not from anger. From disbelief. Young lady, we've been through this. You cannot, under Illinois Supreme Court Rule 13c, Amara interrupted, a pro se defendant may receive assistance from a non-attorney advisor during trial, provided that advisor does not engage in the unauthorized practice of law. Brennan blinked. Mallory stopped smiling. Amara continued. I'm not practicing law, Your Honor. I'm assisting. My father will speak. I'll organize evidence and take notes. Brennan looked at Mallory. Counsel. Mallory stood slowly. He adjusted his tie. Tried to look unbothered. Your Honor, while technically permissible, this is highly irregular. The child has no legal training. Her presence could confuse the jury. There is no jury, Amara said. My father waived his right. This is a bench trial. You're the only one deciding. Brennan's eyes narrowed. He looked at Amara like he was seeing her for the first time. How old are you? 8, Your Honor. And you understand legal procedure? Enough to know you can't deny my father assistance just because I'm young. Silence. Brennan leaned back in his chair. He tapped his fingers on the bench. Fine, he said finally. But the moment you step out of line, you're removed. Understood? Yes, Your Honor. Amara walked through the gate. Sat down next to her father. Marcus squeezed her hand under the table. She squeezed back. Mallory stood. Buttoned his jacket. Your Honor, the state calls Officer Lawrence Reynolds to the stand. Officer Reynolds looked exactly like he did in the security footage. Tall. Broad shoulders. Badge polished to a mirror shine. He took the oath. Sat down. Mallory approached. Hands in his pockets. Casual. Confident. Officer Reynolds, can you describe your involvement in this case? Yes, sir. On the night of October 10th, I received an anonymous tip regarding a possible suspect in the Cicero Avenue depot robbery. The tip identified Marcus Whitfield as someone who matched the description and timeline. And what did you do with that information? I verified Mr. Whitfield's employment records. Confirmed he worked near the depot. Checked his shift logs. Everything matched. So I forwarded the tip to detectives, and an arrest warrant was issued. Did you personally make the arrest? No, sir. Patrol officers executed the warrant. Thank you, officer. No further questions. Mallory sat down. Brennan looked at Marcus. Cross-examination. Marcus stood. His hands shook slightly. Officer Reynolds, he began, you said the timeline matched. But I clocked in at 10:17 that night. The robbery happened at 10:42. How could I have done both? Reynolds didn't hesitate. The depot is 3 miles from your job site. You could have left, committed the robbery, and returned before your shift ended. Did anyone see me leave? No. Did you find the stolen money in my possession? No. Did you find a weapon? No. Then how do you know I did it? Reynolds smiled. Polite. Patient. Like he was explaining something to a child. Because the timeline fits. And we had a credible tip. Marcus sat down. Defeated. Amara didn't move. She just watched. Waited. Brennan looked bored. Anything else, Mr. Whitfield? Amara leaned toward her father. Whispered something. Marcus hesitated. Then nodded. He stood again. Your Honor, may my advisor ask a question? Mallory shot up. Objection. The child cannot, she's not cross-examining, Marcus said quickly. I'm asking the question. She's just helping me phrase it. Brennan exhaled slowly. This is irregular. But not illegal, Amara said softly. Brennan stared at her. Long and hard. One question, he said. That's it. Amara stood. She didn't approach the witness stand. Didn't raise her voice. She just looked at Officer Reynolds and asked, Officer Reynolds, what time did you access the evidence locker on the night of October 10th? Reynolds blinked. Excuse me? The evidence locker. At the Cicero Avenue depot. What time did you enter it? Mallory stood. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. I'll allow it, Brennan said slowly. Answer the question, officer. Reynolds shifted in his seat. I didn't access the evidence locker. Amara tilted her head. Are you sure? Yes. So if I showed you security footage proving otherwise, you'd be surprised. The courtroom went dead silent. Reynolds' jaw tightened. There's no footage. Actually, Amara said, reaching into the canvas bag on the table, there is. She pulled out a disc. Same kind as before. Plastic sleeve. Printed label. FOIA request number 102531, Cicero Depot, Evidence Room, the 10th of October 2347 to 015. Mallory's face went pale. Your Honor, he said quickly, we were not provided this evidence in discovery, because I just received it yesterday, Amara said. Under FOIA, the response time is 10 business days. I filed the request 6 weeks ago. Brennan leaned forward. What's on that disc? Amara looked at Officer Reynolds. Would you like to tell him, officer? Or should I? Reynolds didn't answer. His hands gripped the armrests of the witness chair. Amara turned to the judge. Your Honor, may the court review Exhibit A? Brennan nodded to the bailiff. Play it. The bailiff inserted the disc. The courtroom screen flickered to life. Timestamp, 23:47 and 12 seconds AM. Hallway. Concrete walls. Metal door at the end marked evidence storage. A man entered the frame. Badge visible on his chest. Face clear under the fluorescent lights. Officer Lawrence Reynolds. He glanced at the camera. Then looked away. Opened the evidence locker door. Went inside. Stayed for 8 minutes. Came out. Left. The footage ended. Silence. Brennan's expression was unreadable. Mallory stood frozen. Amara spoke quietly. Officer Reynolds entered the evidence locker 40 minutes after the robbery. Alone. No witness. No log entry. She paused. And according to the case file, that's the same locker where the stolen money was supposed to be stored, but never was. Reynolds' face turned red. I was doing my job. Doing your job? Amara asked. Or planting evidence that never existed. Objection. Mallory shouted. This is speculation. Brennan slammed the gavel. Once. Hard. Mr. Mallory, sit down. Mallory Saturday. Brennan looked at Reynolds. Officer, did you file a report documenting your entry into that evidence locker? I don't recall. That's a yes or no question. Reynolds swallowed. No, Your Honor. Why not? I must have forgotten. Amara's voice cut through the room like a blade. Or maybe you didn't want anyone to know you were there. Still think an 8-year-old can't change the system? Comment exposed if you saw that coming. And if you're not subscribed yet, you're about to miss the biggest twist. Hit that button now. Brennan called a recess. But when they returned, the energy had shifted. Mallory wasn't smiling anymore. Reynolds sat in the back row, sweating through his uniform. And Amara sat at the defense table with a stack of papers in front of her. Each one highlighted. Cross-referenced. Annotated. Brennan cleared his throat. Mr. Mallory, do you wish to call another witness? Mallory stood. His confidence was gone. Replaced with something tighter. Sharper. Your Honor, the state rests. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Brennan frowned. You're resting your case? Already? Yes, Your Honor. We believe the evidence speaks for itself. Brennan turned to Marcus. Mr. Whitfield, do you wish to present a defense? Marcus looked at Amara. She nodded. He stood. Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Amara Whitfield to the stand. Gasps. Mallory shot to his feet. Objection. A child cannot testify as an expert witness. She's not testifying as an expert, Marcus said. She's testifying as a fact witness. She has evidence relevant to this case. Brennan looked skeptical. What kind of evidence? Amara stood. Calm. Steady. Your Honor, I have documentation that proves a pattern of misconduct involving this courtroom, this prosecutor, and Officer Reynolds. The room erupted. Brennan slammed the gavel 3 times. Order! Everyone sit down or I'll clear this courtroom. Silence. Brennan looked at Amara. Approach the bench. Amara walked forward. Mallory joined her. Brennan leaned down. Spoke quietly. Young lady, you're making serious accusations. Do you understand that? Yes, Your Honor. And you have proof? Yes, Your Honor. Brennan glanced at Mallory. Counselor. Mallory's voice was tight. Your Honor, whatever this child thinks she's found, it's inadmissible. She's not a lawyer. She doesn't understand. I understand, Amara interrupted, that you've prosecuted 14 cases in the last 3 years where Officer Reynolds provided the key evidence. And in 12 of those cases, the defendants were convicted despite no physical evidence. Mallory's face went white. I also understand, Amara continued, that all 14 cases were tried in this courtroom. In front of you, Your Honor. Brennan's expression hardened. Step back, he said. Amara returned to the defense table. Brennan looked at the bailiff. Swear her in. The witness chair was too big for her. Her feet didn't touch the ground. But when she placed her hand on the Bible and took the oath, her voice didn't waver. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Marcus stood. He looked nervous, but proud. Amara, can you tell the court what you discovered during your investigation? Objection, Mallory said weakly. Leading. Overruled. Answer the question. Amara pulled out the first document. I filed multiple Freedom of Information Act requests over the last 6 weeks. I requested case records, arrest logs, and security footage from 3 separate incidents. She held up the paper. This is a list of cases prosecuted by Mr. Mallory between 2022 and 2024. 14 in total. All involve anonymous tips. All involve Officer Reynolds as the key witness. All involve poor defendants who couldn't afford private counsel. Marcus nodded. And what did you notice about these cases? A pattern. Amara pulled out another document. In 12 of the 14 cases, evidence was stored in the same locker at the Cicero Avenue depot. The same locker Officer Reynolds accessed without authorization. She paused. And in 10 of those cases, the evidence was later reported as missing or inconclusive. The gallery buzzed. Brennan leaned forward. Are you saying evidence was tampered with? I'm saying evidence was never there to begin with. Mallory stood. His voice shook. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Sit down. Mallory Saturday. Amara continued. I also found something else. She pulled out a third document. 5 years ago, there was a case called State v. Caldwell. Case number 19 CR 4492. It was sealed. Brennan's face went rigid. I don't know why it was sealed, Amara said. But I know it involved the same prosecutor, the same officer, and the same judge. She looked directly at Brennan. Your Honor. The courtroom exploded. People shouted. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Brennan slammed the gavel over and over. Order! Order! When the room finally quieted, Brennan's voice was ice. Miss Whitfield, that case is sealed by court order. You have no right, I have every right, Amara said. Because the defendant in that case was my mother. Silence. Absolute. Total. Brennan's face drained of color. Amara's voice stayed steady. Her name was Stephanie Whitfield. She was an investigative journalist. She was working on a story about evidence manipulation in Cook County. She filed a lawsuit against this court. She held up a photo. A woman. Smiling. Holding a baby. 3 weeks later, she died in a car accident. The case was sealed. The investigation was dropped. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. But she didn't let them fall. And no one ever asked why. Marcus covered his mouth with his hand. The gallery was frozen. Mallory looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. And Judge Harold Brennan just stared at the little girl on the witness stand. You're Stephanie's daughter, he whispered. Yes, Amara said. And I'm here to finish what she started. Sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free, it burns everything down. Drop truth in the comments if you felt that. Subscribe now because what happens next will leave you speechless. Brennan didn't bang his gavel. He just sat there, staring at Amara. Finally, he spoke. Miss Whitfield, step down. Amara climbed out of the witness chair. Walked back to the defense table. Brennan turned to Mallory. Mr. Mallory, do you have anything to say? Mallory stood slowly. He looked like a man drowning. Your Honor, I was not aware of any connection between this case and State v. Caldwell. If there were procedural irregularities. Amara said loudly. You buried evidence. You used a dirty cop. And you let my father sit in jail for 6 weeks because it was easier than admitting you were wrong. That's enough, Brennan snapped. But Amara wasn't finished. You want to know why my mother's case was sealed? Because she found proof. Proof that you, Officer Reynolds, and Mr. Mallory were running a quota system. Arresting poor people, planting evidence, and closing cases fast to make yourselves look good. Mallory's voice cracked. That's a lie, Then why is the case sealed? Amara shot back. Why did my mother die 3 weeks after filing her lawsuit? Why has no one ever investigated? Brennan's face turned red. Miss Whitfield, you are out of line. The courtroom doors opened. Everyone turned. 3 people entered. 2 wore dark suits. FBI badges clipped to their belts. The third was a woman in her 50s. Gray hair pulled back. Glasses. Carrying a briefcase. She walked straight to the bench. Your Honor, I'm Special Agent Carla Ng with the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. We've been monitoring this trial. Brennan's face went ashen. Agent Ng continued. Based on testimony provided here today, we are opening a formal investigation into evidence tampering, judicial misconduct, and prosecutorial abuse within this courthouse. She turned to Officer Reynolds. Officer Reynolds, you're wanted for questioning. Reynolds stood. Tried to leave. The second agent blocked the door. Sit down, officer. Reynolds Saturday. Agent Ng looked at Mallory. Mr. Mallory, you'll also need to come with us. Mallory didn't move. He just stared at the floor. Agent Ng turned to Brennan. Your Honor, effective immediately, all cases tried in this courtroom over the past 5 years are under review. You are recused from this trial. Brennan opened his mouth. Then closed it. He looked at Amara. She didn't smile. Didn't gloat. She just looked back. Agent Ng gestured to Marcus. Mr. Whitfield, all charges against you are dismissed pending further investigation. You're free to go. Marcus blinked. What? You're free. He turned to Amara. She was crying now. Not sad tears. Relief. He pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest. The gallery erupted in applause. But Amara didn't hear it. She just held her father. And for the first time in 6 weeks, she let herself breathe. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Cameras. Microphones. Flashing lights. Mr. Whitfield. How does it feel to be free? Amara. Did you know your mother's case was connected? Will you be filing a lawsuit? Marcus held Amara's hand. They didn't stop. Didn't answer. Agent Ng appeared beside them. I'll make a statement, she said to the reporters. Give them space. The crowd parted. Marcus and Amara walked to the curb. Mrs. Okello was waiting. She wrapped them both in a hug. I'm so proud of you, she whispered to Amara. Amara nodded. But she didn't feel victorious. She just felt tired. Agent Ng approached. Handed Marcus a card. We'll be in touch. There's a lot to unpack here. But you should know, your daughter just exposed one of the biggest judicial corruption rings in Illinois history. Marcus looked at Amara. She's 8. I know, Agent Ng said. That's what makes it so remarkable. She walked away. Marcus knelt down in front of Amara. You saved me, he said quietly. Amara shook her head. I just read the fine print. Marcus smiled. Tears in his eyes. Your mother would be so proud. Amara finally smiled back. I know. When the system is rigged, the smallest voice can be the loudest. Comment justice if this hit you. And if you're still not subscribed, what are you waiting for? The truth doesn't wait for permission. The charges were never refiled. Officer Reynolds pled guilty to evidence tampering and falsifying reports. He was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Prosecutor Vincent Mallory was disbarred. He never practiced law again. Judge Harold Brennan resigned. The Illinois Supreme Court opened an ethics investigation. 73 cases were overturned. 73 people walked free. And Stephanie Whitfield's case was unsealed. The truth came out. She had been right. About everything. Amara sat at the kitchen table. Same table where her father used to read the newspaper. Same table where she used to do homework. But now, there was something new. A framed photo of her mother. Right in the center. Marcus set a plate of food in front of her. You need to eat. I know. You've been staring at that picture for 20 minutes. Amara looked up. Do you think she'd be proud? Marcus sat down. Baby, I know she would. I didn't do it for her. I know. You did it for me. Amara shook her head. I did it because it was right. Marcus smiled, reached across the table, took her hand. You're 8 years old. You should be worrying about homework and friends, not court cases. I know. But you did it anyway. Yeah. Why? Amara thought for a moment. Because someone had to. Marcus squeezed her hand. They ate in silence. Outside, the city hummed. Sirens. Car horns. Life moving forward. But inside that small apartment, everything was still. Peaceful. Safe. Some people are ignored because they are young. Some because they are poor. Some because they are black. Some because the system was never built to hear them in the first place. But power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it sits quietly in the back of a library. Sometimes, it asks the questions no one else thought to ask. Sometimes, it's an 8-year-old girl with a notebook and a refusal to give up. If this happened to your family, would you notice the details? Would you fight back? Or would you trust the system to do it for you? Because the next injustice might not be fictional. And next time, it could be yours. If this story moved you, don't just walk away. Subscribe. Share it. Because stories like this don't just entertain, they warn us. They prepare us. And they remind us that justice isn't given. It's taken. One question at a time.